Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 7 of Inking Neon, the podcast where our authors share our hard-earned insights. Today, we're sitting down with author JA Merkel, the author of the Fall Gauntlet series, to discuss sustaining energy in long projects. Like, how do you keep it together when you are planning a series that is more than one or two short stories? It can be really a long slog to focus on a long-term project, and we're going to be trading some techniques for that. We're also interested in building emotional realism and focusing on that over like easy wins. So how does it feel emotionally real as opposed to just quick and easy hits? JA Merkel is the author of the Fall Gauntlet, and we'll be hearing today from the first book in that series, which is called Bear. Howdy, Job. Welcome to Inking Neon.
Oh, thank you for having me, guys. Great to be here.
And I'm Colin McHale, author of the Inmani series, and with me is my co-host Stuart Tanner.
Yeah, hi. Yes, we're going to be delving into the world of the bear and the entire series, and there's a lot that's really a little bit different and highly engaging and interesting about it. So, we're all set with loaded up with questions and going to investigate and delve into this over the next hour. So, yeah, looking forward to it.
How's it going, Job?
It's going well. Yeah, good to see you guys. I'm excited to talk all things sci-fi fantasy with you. I told you before, I've listened to all of your episodes now. I really enjoy just your insights around the different genres. And yeah, I'm really excited to talk to you guys more.
Well, we're excited to have you. It's always fun to talk shop with other authors, and especially I really liked your idea of questioning what it takes to stay focused over long-term projects, because it's one thing to get inspired and write a short story. It's another thing even to do like a sprint, like a NaNoWriMo style sprint, and arrive at something that resembles a novel. But how do you plan long-term? How do you, there's such a difference for runners when you're training between short-term sprints and marathons. And I wonder, and I never thought before about what an author might do in their daily practice to make the difference between practicing for short stories and training for long series. I think it's a really cool topic. I'm excited to dive into it. But before we do, I'd love to hear a sample of Bear, the first book of the Fall Gauntlet series.
Awesome. Sounds great. I will dive right in. So I'll just show the little novella on camera, super short, 55 pages. And I'll just give a short log line as well. So 2 estranged brothers armed with high-tech animal masks fight through a deadly tournament to have one wish granted, only to find out that their final opponent is each other. All right, so...
Can't wait.
I'm actually going to start with the dedication. It says, "For Jude, no matter which universes we find ourselves in, I know time and again we'll be brothers every time." And then I kind of have these epigraphs in the beginning to describe each of the animals. So this comes from the Book of Totems, which is a very formative book for the people on this planet that they basically go everything by. "It is said that the bear disappeared from Calypso before many of the first animals, that among all the originals, it sought out wisdom from the gods and goddesses before all others. Would it be impossible to imagine that a creature so carefully crafted by the Dei would eventually seek out its creators? Or was the bear searching for something else? Totem scholars believe that the bear never left our planet, that it is sleeping within the hollow of a great tree, waiting for its human champion to wake it from its slumber and bring protection to the land. When the bear appears to you in a dream, listen to its steady breathing, feel the beat of its one true and vicious heart, learn the location of its sacrifice. That is when the bear will awaken. That is when the bear lives inside you. All right, chapter 1. In my nightmares, Soren and I are running. We're always running, but it's never fast enough. No one in my family can ever run fast enough. On the morning of my final match, Dee rushes down the tunnel leading to my holding cell with the decisive and energetic footsteps I've come to know so well. She isn't supposed to be here, especially at 5 a.m, hours before my match, but I've stopped trying to figure out the crown or anything about how the gods and goddesses work. I put my lynx mask down on my desk and meet her at the door as her echoing steps die to nothing. She's out of breath, more hurried and rattled than I've seen her. Has something happened? Am I still supposed to fight today? Pre-dawn light filters through the one barred window and casts deep shadows on her pale face as our planet tilts and opens itself to our star for the day. Another day of judgment. Her emerald green eyes are hot with some unspoken pain, but her words are like ice. She is the one to carry the news of my brother, Soren, to me. He's been training for the gauntlet, Benji, Dee says, catching her breath. He's the one you have to fight. Now I'm the breathless one. Sometimes you train for the better part of your life so you can save your mother from her off-world prison, and other times you have to fight to the death against your own flesh and blood to free her. I always thought Mom being arrested for treason and taken away was the beginning of the end, but in time I learned we would all pay for our sins. Dad for the medicines we'd stolen to heal his infected and rotting leg from his accident at the mines, Soren for breaking the leg of the crown, and me for orchestrating the heist. That's the crown for you. Just when you think they've taken everything, they take more, and now they're doing it again. Dad used to say that the Fall Gauntlet tournament was the crown's way of maintaining public order by having people fight for what they believe in, while also pleasing the Dei, our all-knowing gods and goddesses, wherever they're supposed to be. But I'm beginning to think it's about something else. The creators have been waiting for today, for the strongest fighter and totem animal to claim victory and rule over harvest, at least for the next 4 years, until the next tournament happens and the cycle starts all over again. They'll grant the victor one wish, but Soren's been training for the gauntlet? My tongue feels like it's fallen down into my throat, but then I get the words out. That wonderful and insightful piece of information would have been good, 7 years ago. That's when Soren and I were separated from one another. Dad went to prison, and we never heard from him again. Soren was sent to the mines at just 8 years old to take Dad's place. Since I was skilled at Scion technology by then, based on the contraptions I had made, they sent me to the inner circle to apprentice under Master Garrus, where I would make weapons and tech for the crown. Dee winces, swallowing the words I know she was ready to say, as she presses fingers against her temples. I know this is hard for her too. We've grown close during these last few months. She's been my confidant, a source of strength when I return to my cell, bringer of food, and speaker of mostly soothing words. This isn't her fault. The last thing I want is for her to feel bad about something she did or didn't tell me. My entire family is being torn apart by the crown. I'm about to battle my little brother to the death, and here I am worried about one of the crown guard's feelings. Granted, she's not just any guard, but still. Classic Benji move. This is probably why the crown can control me with the promise of freeing my mother. Feelings. I'm sorry, Benji. I didn't know until now, Dee says. One of the other guards was mouthing off, and they were going on and on about the bear champion, and they let the name Soren slip. I know you talked about him to me before. He's your final opponent. The words tumble out of her mouth like she doesn't have enough time. She steals a glance behind her. Maybe she doesn't. That doesn't get easier the second time you say it. I say, Benji, pull out. You can't fight against your brother. You can't beat the bear. Dee already knows that deserters are executed, so I don't remind her and instead indulge her small moment of hysteria. The crown would never allow Soren or me to leave the gauntlet because our nation needs a champion. A victorious bear means something very different for the people of the land than a victorious lynx. I pick up my heavy lynx mask from the cot. I feel better holding it, being close to it. It helps me see what others cannot, and has always been my key to victory. Ignoring the fact that Dee thinks Soren can beat me in a fight, I say, I need to see him. It's hard to believe you, that it's him, that he's here, fighting in this tournament too. I'm back at the cell door, looking into Dee's eyes, hoping there's some mistake. Soren, my only brother. It's amazing what neural connections can do, because the second that I accept this news about Soren, my world opens to his presence, and memories of when we were last together rush toward me. Light from the window skitters across the holding cell floor, but in another time, I'm seeing guards come through our door after one knock, as though these two realities are superimposed on one another. Soren and I are escaping from a window. I'm waiting for Soren to land, to hurry up, not hurried enough. A guard is intercepting us, grabbing me by the wrist, but then I'm turning his weight against him, bringing him down. There's a rush of exhilaration, the unspeakable satisfaction of best something I hate. Someone who had already taken my mother away, and then the guard is on his feet, and my throat is in his hand, my back crushed against the stone wall, feet dangling, helpless. Soren is dropping down, finally. His eyes hold a golden glint, that first sign of rage that I knew, even then, would be our family's undoing. Soren is punching once, twice, 3 times. And I'm telling him no, demanding that he stop. Soren is pausing, considering. I'm outmaneuvering the guard again, shooting my grip claw into the wooden post above as I lasso his wrists and send him skyward, his bulky frame jerking off the ground like a fish on a hook. The cool morning air is rushing past us as we sprint through the long and winding labyrinth that leads to home. Thoughts arrive, so many thoughts, a premonition, something warning me. We should have been more careful. We arrive home, throw open the door, excited to give Dad the medicine we've stolen. Then, a silence so heavy it can crush your soul. 2 henchmen and a gauntlet juror named Harmony stand in our home. Harmony is calling us thieves, telling us that thieves do not go unpunished under her watch. I'm thinking, knowing that we should have never let the guard in the street see us. There's a pang in my stomach for what Soren did, and I'm getting a sickening feeling, my stomach twisting into unrecognizable shapes for what he is about to do. He couldn't prevent it. Neither of us could prevent it, but Soren made sure to leave his mark. My mind goes blank. Benji, they say he kills people with one swing of his club, Dee says. I don't respond. I've heard stories and whispers over the years that Soren became angry and stupid, a ball of trapped energy, refusing to learn how to read or return to the society he'd known. It's hard to picture my brother and what he'd look like now, if he'd grown into a similar version of me, or if he'd reached the size and height Mom and Dad thought he would, tall and broad like a sailor, like Poppy. If he is the bear, he might be huge. I've never seen the bear, but I've heard about him. Part of me knew this is how it would end up, but the fact that my opponent is Soren is a shock I still can't process. I rack my brain for the lore behind the bear champion, trying to decipher what this matchup, lynx versus bear, will mean. Dee is crying, and her hands are shaking as she presses them against her chest. Her tears are silent, but carry years of pain over the crown, destroying lives like we are all just pawns on a chessboard, expendable and insignificant. The urge to shout at someone, something, anything takes over. I want to tell Dee she's lying, that this is all a big trick, because what more could the crown do to torture their citizens? What more could they do to torture me that they haven't already done? They could feed me lies about my family, about the possibility of saving them, then pit me against my brother with only minutes to process the ordeal. It's been 10 years since they took my mother, 7 since they took my father and brother, 10 years of wondering and dreaming and wishing for a way to be with my family again, and this is how it happens. Are you in danger? I ask her, aware of movement from new pieces in this grand chess game the crown has constructed. Not that I know of. Dee shakes her head, brushing off my question. She looks up at me with bloodshot eyes. How can the crown be so cruel? I don't answer. I have to remain neutral, especially this close to my final match. A win means my wish will be granted and I can finally save Mom. I'm so close to this victory, but now the crown has chucked a rather large wrench into the works, clogging up and complicating what I've spent so many years building. I know I have to make a decision. What are you going to do, Benji? Dee's eyes are bright with half-shed tears. I hold up my mask as though it holds the answers that I need. With microchips and photosensors embedded into the interior, handiwork that I once learned while apprenticing for Master Garrus within the castle walls, the mask feels familiar, like it is the only ally I have in this fight. Garrus taught me that I could become someone else with technology's help. By learning the principles of physics, by training to strengthen my muscles and perform maneuvers that would surprise and take down my opponents, I learned that I, too, could become a champion and make a wish to save the ones I loved. And if I didn't win, I'd die trying. Placing the mask on my face will activate the aura field and release fission elements so that the mask's photon receptors can create a more realistic image of a lynx. Once the organics have finished pixelating, the hollow skin and my own internal system has calibrated to the masks, integration will be complete. Removing my mask will result in immediate execution, since the identities of the fighters must always remain secret. So I'll need to figure out a way to show Soren, in case he doesn't already know, that he's fighting against his dear older brother. Sure, easy enough. The only other rule of the gauntlet is that there can be only one champion. There are no draws. I'll do what I've always done, I say, defeat whatever the crown throws at me. I don't share with Dee what I'm really thinking. I have no idea what to do.
Like any good protagonist.
Yeah.
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 Awesome. That is the opening chapter of Bear, the first book of the Fall Gauntlet. And check the show notes for a link to get your copy and read the rest of the story. And I'll add that it's a quick read, an easy read, and very reasonably priced. So go check out JA Merkel's Bear. Just for context, because we're going to kind of move into talking about like series planning and sort of plotting and craft things. I wanted to start by asking about your process in prepping for the Fall Gauntlet. Did you know in advance that this was going to be a series, or did it start as a rush of creativity that led to a short story or a chapter even?
Yeah, kind of a mix. So, bit of a funny story with that one. The Fall Gauntlet Bear was originally called The Fox and the Bear, and it was a standalone short story that I was writing to help me process things that were going on with my family, my parents, and my brother. For anyone who's read it can probably pick up on those parallels. And I was submitting a bunch of short stories to Sci-Fi and fantasy magazines, and the editor I had hired, we had been pitching for a couple of months. She came to me with a proposition and said, hey, we can continue this route. I'll continue to support you. But if you want to try independently publishing, then I think your writing is at the level where if you follow my framework, I've helped other authors find success. I think you could find some level of success. It's not going to be easy, but
Sure isn't.
it sure isn't. If you want, I can help. And so, long story short, she said, send me your top 5 short stories that you think have series potential, build them out. We did a very intensive 2 months of, she basically like doubled as my writing coach and doing some research on like genres, what is selling, going through Amazon and kind of, seeing what was doing well based on number of reviews and things like that. And of those 5, the Fall Gauntlet, or the Fox and the Bear, became the Fall Gauntlet Bear. That was the one I felt the best about. She also said to publish 3 short stories at the same time and see which would do the best. And then based on that, I could continue that series. But
That's smart.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
second.
that's
smart.
really solid. Yeah.
That's a good data-driven way to decide what to write. I think a really common mistake for new writers is just writing whatever story you've got in your head, which of course is how you have to start because you have to love what you're doing. But shotgunning a series, like a bunch of different options, and seeing which one sticks, and then building on that, gives you the chance to draw on some data, because not everything you write is going to be equally marketable.
Right. And it's low stakes because they're shorter stories, so you're not putting a ton of time.
Yeah, I agree. That's a really great strategy. I wish someone had told me that because I did the exact opposite, which is jump into something mammoth without any, you know, pre-cogitation or strategizing. And so to have, the interesting thing with writers, I think, at least in my experience, is, it's rarely about finding an idea. For most writers and everything, they have too many ideas. They have an abundance of ideas. They have loads of things that they want to write, and this short novel, this series. Oh, what about that? Which have been cogitating away, and they can pick from quite a bunch. So to have that sort of editor kind of like steer and advise, and to do those sort of trials and everything. Yeah, great strategy, really brilliant idea. Wish I'd thought of it.
But it raises the question. So you've got your 5 short stories. They're on the market. You can see which one's selling. So how do you go from a short story to a series? Like, is there a coherent strategy, or do we just YOLO?
Just YOLO. Yeah, basically just YOLO. No, do you mean going to book 2 from the short story, book 1?
Yeah. Did you lay a foundation? Were there any steps or lessons that you wish you'd known?
Gosh, so many. I think that there have definitely been plenty of challenges with doing a novella series. And to be clear, she said, let's publish 3 of your best short stories, see what does the best. But I didn't even make it to a second short story. I had some delays with like the cover. And by the time Bear came out, it was doing like well enough, better than I thought it would do. And Rat was pretty much done. But to answer your question,
Rat being the second book in the
Rat being the second book, yes. For me, it was about just developing these frameworks and then sticking to them. Because, like Stuart mentioned, I have such an ADHD brain that I need we all have so many ideas, and I need something to like distill it into, okay, let's make a plan. Let's go for this series and just like shut everything else out.
Tell us about your plan.
Yeah, so in working with my editor, her name is Jean, and over those 2 months, it was a lot of back and forth, but essentially she was like, write down everything, create a story Bible for me. And then, so once I make the story Bible, I use a combination of frameworks. I really like the story grid. So finding the external like theme, I forget all the different terms for it, but basically
Story grid is a Googleable term. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So the society plot is what I really like. It's about like revolution and rebellion and rising up over this power. So both of my series are actually in that same society genre.
You have a fondness for that particular set of themes.
Yeah.
Oh, I certainly do. Right in there, dystopian themes, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you can't have dystopian. I mean, if you have dystopian themes and not revolutionary themes, then you are writing fascist porn, which I think maybe isn't.
Yeah, not my thing.
Not my thing. Maybe probably shouldn't exist. I'm not one for burning books, but I don't know about that one.
Yeah, not so fun.
Okay, so you set out to write a series, and you wanted to discuss the theme of sustaining a long-running series. So that suggests to me that you have some ideas of things people maybe a younger you might have needed to hear. And I wonder if you'd like to share what hard-earned lessons you've developed in terms of planning for a series.
Yeah, definitely.
I could use some help with this, frankly. So for context, I'm on book 2 of my series, which also started as a short story. I wrote about a dozen different short stories, and I got 5 of them published with different
Nice.
with different small presses. But then I didn't look at sales statistics to help me figure out which one to write next. I should have. That would have been smart. I just picked the one I liked the best and started developing it into a series. I got the first one done, but the second one is proving very challenging.
Yeah.
It's not uncommon, is it? The second book being more challenging. I would also say that's true for me also.
Yeah, so you're talking to your audience here. So how do you sustain yourself? For
highly receptive. Give
please.
It to us.
Yes.
Give us the news.
So book 2's, for me, I think and for the longest time, I mean, I still struggle with this for sure, but for the longest time, it was pacing that was my biggest issue. So discovering the story grid, kind of building out my entire story into an Excel doc. I mean, it's so mathematical, like every single scene, on screen, off screen characters, the polarity shift of that character. That helped my pacing issues a lot. And then overlaying things like Save the Cat to kind of like first, middle, final, third, things like that to kind of give it another layer of depth. And for book 2, I just followed my framework. Again, I think the research that I did really came in handy because things like Hunger Games obviously sell well. Even the title of the Fall Gauntlet is like a similar pattern. And
it is evocative of things like the Hunger Games or the Labyrinth or like it suggests the genre right there in the title, which is hard to do. That's a whole decision-making tree right there.
Right. Yeah, it suggests death, dystopian. I really liked one of your insights on another podcast, Cullen, about you called cyberpunk the like cannibalization of bodies, or do you remember what you said?
Cyberpunk is a commoditization of the body.
That's right. Yep. Yeah, and I found that so interesting. I think, that's something that the dystopian genre really relies on, but putting that insight to it, I was like, oh yeah, that does make a lot of sense. But yeah, book 2, I just followed the framework. I mean, to get really into the weeds with it, so you have the society theme, and it has 8 obligatory scenes. And books 1, 2, and 3, Bear, Rat, Chrysix, they're all around 8 chapters. So literally each chapter is one of those obligatory scenes.
Really strong endorsement of the plotter.
Yes, very much.
Yeah, this is my worst fear, Job. You're confirming my worst fear that what I need to do is plot.
We did folks have a whole
no, what if Stuart's
podcast.
right?
Oh yeah. Podcast on that, going into plot or flying by your, discovery writing, flying by your pants, I think we call it.
I have suspected this all along, that the secret to book 2, the infamous book 2, is to plot it and stick to your plot. Something which I really struggle to do. So that may be part of where my problem arises.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the reasons why that may be the case is that most of what we think about is in terms of a singular story, whereas when it comes to structuring a series, you've got to pull this kind of cyber rabbit out of the hat, which is like, it's got to be it really helps if it's a singular story, but it also is an unfinished story. So you have a plot line that's gonna, in some sense, reach completion, but there's still major questions and elements that continue and are left unanswered that must go into the next book and stuff. So, as with a symphony over 4 parts and everything, it all needs to relate to each other. And, it's a major task, it's a lot to actually figure all that out. Yeah, the storyline that is the completion with the arc of your main characters, enough completion to satisfy for reading one book, but then enough to continue as plot lines and development into a second book and a third book. I mean, I'm working on a trilogy. I think you are as well, Colin. And
My series is open-ended.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, even better. Good luck with that.
Thanks. I need it.
That's what we call it.
That might have been my mistake.
Meanwhile, 20 years down the line.
We're on still on book 2. Yeah.
Still open-ended.
Well, I hear in Job's comment here that there is at least one solution to this problem, which is sticking really closely to a structure that you had in mind from the beginning, right? Like the story grid provides you with 8 beats that you can hit, and you know what you need to do next, right? And you also know when you're done because you've done the 8th one. That really does make it easier if you are constitutionally capable of doing that. So I congratulate you on starting there. It's taken me 20 years to work around to try to actually, I mean, I have tried to do that. I've never succeeded.
Well, I'd like to ask you a little something, because, I want to give you like a little sort of fresh, cool sort of like award for your book. And one of the things that was really right there in the first story, sort of very present early on, and you focus on it quite a bit. I completely understand why. Is this idea, of taking something like animals and animal powers, which in a way is old world, from the distant past and from our connection to animals and their qualities and all the rest of it, and then combining that with something that's ultra high tech, which is a sort of an enhancement of, you even use the word totem, of course, so a totem animal and everything. So it's like a synthesis of those two things, which, is engaging, is a powerful hook, it's a really, nice idea. Sci-fi, other sci-fi stories and writers are also pulled from old world kind of mythology and ideas and things like that, and
Lord of Light vibes a little bit,
and then high tech them and all the rest of it. There's something really compelling about that. I'm not going to analyze why particularly, but it is very gripping. I suspect it's partly because of the spectrum that it covers, which is like this really gritty animal level, which of course we have within us, so these primal powers mixed with future powers, high technology powers, and the enhancement of the two, bringing them two together, and then putting them to fight with each other, which is like, well, that sounds like fun. And indeed it is,
Yeah,
indeed it is. So what was the original inspiration for that,
Gosh, I feel like so many things. Thank you for the kind words, by the way. Honestly, I think a lot of it comes from my own history growing up in a very religious family. I'm one of 9. Was raised Roman Catholic, went to church every Sunday, all the sacraments. My parents are still very devout Christians, Catholics. And I think just really asking a lot of questions about it from a young age and having things that didn't necessarily like jive with how I saw the world. And so I think with, ancient books like the Bible, there's a parallel there with the Book of Totems, and kind of where we've come from is something that has always fascinated me. I'm very interested in my ancestry. My grandfather came from Hungary. We didn't know this for the longest time. I just kind of like went on that whole journey of discovering it, getting my dual citizenship over there. But all that to say, as you mentioned, Stuart, like this dichotomy of where we've come from, things in the past, so like our animalistic primal instincts and desires, and then where we're going with technology. I think I just want to tell a story about where we've come from and telling the truth about where we've come from for people to interpret however they would like to. But this is a story that's like really burning inside of me based on everything that has happened in my life. I have 3 gay siblings. I'm in the LGBT community myself. And there's just a lot of things that kind of grind against each other with those two like ideologies.
There's something profoundly subversive embedded in this idea, subversive against, of reaching into a past that is kind of an alternative to the Western canon narrative of humanity that progresses inevitably towards some sort of Calgary, right? Like I too grew up Catholic. I have a kind of a complicated religious background, but that was a piece of it. And I think that those of us who've left that particular faith, or at least challenged that faith, there's something very compelling in imagining a future that connects with our past instead of a future that annihilates the past. Catholicism imagines that the end of time is coming, as does most Christian faith. So taking things that are like animistic and totemistic, we're borrowing, of course, from native tradition, because there isn't all that much else to borrow from in our neck of the woods here. We're desperate for perspective on deep time in the past and how we might have deep time in our future instead of an end of days, right? And I think that's actually very helpful to think about, because right now capitalism is leading to climate change, is leading to another form of apocalypse. And we need to, as science fiction writers, imagine how the deep time of our ancestors might become the deep time of our descendants.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, you know, one of the great things about science fiction writing, particularly, it's not excluding from other books or even fantasy or whatever, but you know, so much of you know, what you were mentioning about the cultural influence we grow up with is the idea that somehow, you know, we've lived somehow the best part of humanity and something amazing was in the past which we've lost.
Right.
And that, you know, things are kind of, we're approaching the end or something like that, or this great sort of like finishing. Whereas certainly myself, and I think a lot of sci-fi writers are like, have the opposite view, that actually we've only just started to get going. And you can see what technology has done within a time frame of 150 to 200 years, which is like, I mean, incomparably transformational. Obviously, there's downsides as well. But in terms of what it's done for
mass
humanity,
extinction,
yeah, well, mass extinction, yeah, that's definitely probably one of the downsides. I would say.
I would say so.
Yeah. On the other hand, the liberation of people from feudalism and all the rest of it, you know, when 90% of people were in some form of chattel or something, is like incredible in such a short period of time. And technology is at the heart of that, because, you know, without being able to be free to disseminate ideas and think rather than grow turnips, you know, you wouldn't have the opportunity to do that. So sci-fi writers are sort of projecting forwards and saying, well, heck, we've only just got going.
How do we get these things in the same place?
Yeah. I mean, you know, we're gonna drag some of that. You know, we were wandering around for hundreds of thousands of years and everything, and that's style of life. We're gonna drag that into the future, and maybe we're at the middle point. But there's all this stuff in the future, which includes what you were talking about earlier. Is like that combination of those influences and our primal nature, with how we're going to change with something like much more advanced, futuristic, technologically enhanced and everything, and the synthesis between those things. And none of us really know what that's going to look like. But wow, is it an interesting field to play in, though, and to set up scenarios and to pursue ideas in and all the rest of it. But it's forward looking. Fundamentally, it's forward looking. And so that's I think, you know, like a really compelling part of it. And as I go, you know, to round off the point, to go back to the inspiration that you had and that compelling idea right at the core there of combining those and sort of like, you know, speaking to something very primal in humanity, but then also these incredible potentials being unreleased, which I guess, you know, the crown is sort of there, and they're a little bit mysterious at this point, but, you know, obviously more is going to be revealed. They're the controlling factor and all the rest of it, but this power is going to be unleashed and, you know, do something in the future. No spoilers here, but, you know, that you can feel that. You can feel that sort of developing, you know.
Yep. Yeah, a lot of secrets with the masks and how they've gotten to how the Fall Gauntlet itself developed. Who are the gods and goddesses? Are they real? Are they out there? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very fun to play in.
Blending of mysticism and technology, or animism, I guess, in this case, and technology, to be more specific, is always really interesting and seems to be a consistent theme on the show. I'm curious if did you feel like when you were putting this together that it was self-conscious, the effort to develop a sci-fi spirituality kind of framework?
Self-conscious, kind of like almost subconscious, like maybe not necessarily able to access everything consciously, but is that kind of what you're asking, Colin?
Well, I guess what I'm wondering is, you clearly developed an animistic sort of spiritual sci-fi blend. Mm-hmm. In doing that, did you have particular goals in mind for what the spirituality needed to represent to the reader or to yourself?
Ooh, I like this question. I don't know if it was goals per se. Like, I have planned it out and I know how it's going to end and kind of like Benji's journey and all of these important beats throughout. But I think it's sort of just Benji's journey discovering the world, very similar to like a lot of the questions that I asked as a young kid. Like, just because this is told to me or it's a really old book that says it doesn't mean I'm necessarily going to believe it, because there are other truths out there that I want to find. There are truths inside my body. That's another theme that I really like to explore with so the masks themselves, this technology that you put over yourself. So like cell phones, you know, a lot of hiding. I wore a mask for so many years, and I think a lot of us do hide parts of ourselves out of safety or for whatever reason. But in terms of my goals for it, yeah, I think to answer your question, yes, I think I knew like the statement I wanted to make. But I also think it's kind of like a love letter to my parents, to be completely honest.
Yeah, well, you know, that's I mean, that is a powerful aspect of being creative and writing. I mean, it is a powerful process. And, you know, when you create something like a series or a book or anything or something like that, there's the book itself, and then there's the experience of writing it for the writer and all the rest of it. So I do think that, you know, through going through that process, whether you're conscious of it or not, you know, there are certain revelations that you get along the way that stay with you, and insights maybe into your own experiences, your own past, your own family, your own relationships, and so on, which dawn as a result of that focus and creative process. And You've mentioned some that's there for you, so that, I mean, I don't know, I mean, it's maybe a slightly tricky question, but do you have any observations of your own transformation as a result of writing the series and sort of like where you are at the end of it as opposed to at the beginning of it?
Mm, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think for all of us, like writing is a way to process our emotions. I would guess that it's like maybe therapy for you guys too. It definitely is that for me to kind of work through whatever I'm going through. I published Bear summer of 2023 and maybe wrote it a year before that. So it hasn't been in existence that long. Um, yeah, it's a really good question. I think in Benji's journey, and this is a theme that I really love putting in my books, is love as magic. And I think the things that Benji is going through all the way from 1 through 6, I'm writing 7 and 8 now, regardless of how he feels about his parents or their beliefs or the crown, there is something about the idea that love conquers and wins and is stronger than something someone wrote in a book thousands of years ago. So I think I'm constantly relearning that if I close off or like harden my heart, then writing these books helps like remember that.
Really brings us to
That's
our
great.
second theme, which is writing emotional realism. You wanted to talk about it, but I wanted to ask first what emotional realism means to you. I think we might have just gotten a little bit of an insight into that, but we could put words to it.
Yeah, for sure. So it's a really interesting concept. I've been reading up on it a bit and trying to express it to you guys today. I've just been all over the place with it of like, how do I talk about this? But I had a friend send me something yesterday. It was like the laws of the universe, like 13 of them. They were each a couple words, but one particularly stuck out. And it was that energy never lies. And I just love this idea in the context of emotional realism because when I'm writing, energy never should lie. So, to kind of define it at its most basic level, like just very realistic emotion, it's going to be much like deeper into the character. I think it draws upon like a character's history, their psychology, how they think, and making sure that those like pretty much consistently match. I think that you can always have conflicting emotions. All humans do. I think we're very complex, but I think it's the author's job to be able to show that on the page, whether it's the character thinking consistently and it's like, yeah, this makes sense within their character, or showing that maybe they don't act that way one time because of something that has changed or it's part of their arc. So, all that to say, energy never lies. I think on the page, you could have someone smiling in a scene, but as the author, it's kind of like, well, maybe they're fidgeting, or maybe there's a sensation in their body, like their heart beating really fast. I think just being true to each character in every single scene feels like emotional realism to me.
To the degree that you can feel the character in your own body, that really does help, especially when you're judicious with your words, not over describing, of course, but finding where the real feelings live in them. Yeah. As you were talking, it made me think of a challenge that I have as a writer, which is that some emotions are easier for me to convey than others. And I was just noticing that the ones that I struggle with are ones that I don't feel as strongly, I think, as other people do. And it made me think that maybe an interesting writing exercise would be to spend some time journaling about which feelings you feel the strongest and which feelings you maybe are aware other people feel stronger than you. And then taking the time to maybe address those feelings that you don't feel as strongly, because as authors, we need to embody characters who are not like us. It'd be an interesting challenge because yeah.
Well, I have a question for you then. Is it, what are those ones though? Is that a secret? You don't have to. It's just pure curiosity and manifesting here.
I think a lot of people experience like romantic and sexual attraction in a way that I don't. And I have learned this from reading other people's books, because I always get to these scenes and they do not feel familiar to me. Not to say that I don't experience romantic or sexual attraction. I do. But it doesn't have the same level of intensity as I frequently read other people describing. I also find that people's reaction to social pressure, particularly like teasing and different kinds of social pressure. So there's teasing pressure, there's intimidation, there's sex appeal, there's fast talk. My reactions to those kinds of influence dynamics is different from other people's. Some people are highly susceptible to being fast talked. I have not found that I am. And that my emotions don't change because when someone gets into a patter and starts trying to speak to me that way. But I do see that other people's do. So it's kind of interesting. I think that we're all our own unique, weird little beings. And maybe part of our job as authors is to take the time to figure out what our particular crystalline structure is and how it breaks the light.
Yeah. Well, homework for next week, Colin. The character that does experience those things really intensely.
Yeah, right? Good.
I might be able to give a few tips.
Talking about writing as
But it's true, though. I mean, we all have our emotional spectrums and, stronger colors in certain areas and maybe not so strong in other areas and everything. And I don't think you can extract that entirely from your writing. Your writing has a bandwidth where you can change the voice for different books maybe and all the rest of it. You can change the tone and all the rest of it. Maybe there'll be a piece of technology before too long that we can attach to ourselves and sort of turn up the strength of certain colors in our spectrum. But before then, I mean, I think that's for all of us, that is going to manifest in our work. But that's entirely okay because fortunately, there's plenty of people out there that will like the particular mix of the colors in our particular rainbow, as it were.
Hope.
Yeah, one would hope.
The real challenge is finding them.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's true. I do have another. One thing I found interesting about the series and the way you've structured and everything. I did feel a sort of resonance slightly from game design and game structure. Particularly in the fact of the novella form and then moving on and so on. I mean, is that something that's conscious for you, or is it just, there's such a crossing over because games have become so big, so advanced now, and great acting, great writing, great world building and everything. So there's crossovers going both ways these days. So, it may not be conscious, it may not be, but... I did think about it.
Yeah, it definitely was for me. And that was part of my planning with Jean. She said, this is very gamified and gamers will find it interesting. I don't think this is too much of a spoiler, but, after book one, the Fall Gauntlet does continue. So it's, new settings, new villains. They are fighting essentially on raised platforms or something that you can fall off of, and that is directly tied to my love and obsession for Super Smash Brothers that I grew up on. So yeah, I think that's a good insight, Stuart. It is. I think it has gamification potential, whether that's like a Kickstarter or whatever else.
It's an interesting crossover. The game, seeing game influence work its way back into speculative fiction, where I'm more used to watching it go the other way. But it's definitely a feature of my writing as well. I notice that there's something about the understandable rules of a video game that makes high technology more accessible, even in literature. So, like when you're describing some super advanced technology, as you are in Bear, and there's you've got nanotech and crazy self-organizing crystalline growth structures, and putting that into the context of there being some kind of rules like a game makes it much more understandable to the reader. And then of course your characters are engaged in a game, a gladiatorial game, but it's a game. There are rules.
Yeah.
That definitely there's an advantage to that, because you can list the rules and the audience can then understand them and start thinking about exploits, and it's very much like genre awareness, but like in-world genre awareness. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of King of the Mountain, like simple rule everyone can understand. Get knocked off and die.
Yeah. And it's compelling, isn't it? It makes for compelling drama for there to be rules. I guess we just like games as a species.
Yeah.
And stakes.
And stakes.
And you obviously you set those out very early on. Very high stakes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kill your brother to save your mother. Pretty rough.
Yeah.
That's a tough call.
Yeah.
That's a tough call. I don't know how I would handle that one. So you wanted to talk about emotional realism, and we've talked about it a little bit, about embodying characters, and you also wanted to talk about sustaining a long-running series. And we talked a little bit about how sustaining a long-running series can be achieved. At least one avenue is through the discipline to make plans and the further discipline to stick to them. Too much to ask for some of us, but probably a really good strategy if you could do it. Did you have any final thoughts about sustaining a long-running series or emotional realism?
I mean, yeah, I have some thoughts. I think that there's a lot of discourse, and I'd be curious to hear what you guys think about this topic. There's kind of some criticism around like writing to market. And while I understand, like, yeah, if you hate a certain genre, let's say romance, don't write it just to, don't like suffer through that just to make money. I don't know. I think in that case, that has credence of like, yeah, writing to market. But I think there's a way to combine the two things where you have a series or an idea that you absolutely love and you're passionate about it and you're writing to market. And that is like my other series, The Fourth Portal. Other readers, are asking about book 2. Only book 1 is out, and I just can't seem to go back to that series because I'm just having so much fun with the Fall Gauntlet. So I think, yeah, like find something that you really love. I mean, that's so cliche, and we all like know that internally, but I don't know. I think part of that is, the planning and research as well, and just seeing if you can find something where all of those things intersect.
That is such good advice.
It is good advice. I'd say particularly now, because of the way things are, I mean, it's a nice idea that you kind write one you want to write without necessarily much regard for that, and that's perfectly legitimate if that's what you want to do. But it is smarter to actually pay attention to the other side of the equation. Not that it should dictate or detract from what you want to do. You know, write your vision and stick to it and follow that, because you can't call where you try and second guess what's going to really work with people is another game entirely. But you really can pay attention to where things are for authors, publishers, the markets, and all those different aspects. And you do yourself a favor by paying attention to that, or have someone do that. Even better, have someone do that for you and advise you and everything. So yeah, I agree. I think you can blend the two. They needn't compromise each other. They in fact can enhance each other quite a bit. Because, you know, you want your books to be read, right? I mean, everyone you want the books to be
read. And right now, 90% of reading is done by 3% of the population. But I pulled both those numbers pretty much out of thin air, but that's a pretty good approximation to what's going on. The number of people who read books is at a high percentage of the population at a historic low. It's at a historic high, but only because our population is the biggest it's ever been. Which still means there's lots of people reading. And the people who read books read a lot of books. The people who are looking for books to read are very familiar with the genres that they like. So you need to be familiar with their genre too. So I have a couple of responses to this, like writing to the market kind of idea. I do think it's a bad idea to chase fads. I think that if you're chasing fads, you're always going to be 3 years behind the latest fad, and I just don't know why you would do that. Write what you love, write what you know, write what comes from you. But we're authors. We have a million things we could write. If you can find one of those that is in a genre that is selling well, you should write that one. Right? I mean, and that is the difference between, somebody writing in their journals for self-help and somebody who's actually trying to like make a career out of writing, is that, and this is true for journalists, this is true for ad copywriters, you always want to know who you are writing to. Ad copywriters get a profile of their intent, of the person who will buy this product, and they put a picture on that profile and they put it above their computer. And you write to that specific person. That is the person you're talking to. And that's the same, authors should be doing the same thing. So writing to the market, I think it's a mistake to think that means you have to chase trends. But I think it's absolutely true that you should know who you're talking to, because it's not you. It's the person who buys these books. And they have read a lot of these books that are like this one. And so you should have a good idea of who buys your genre and what they look like and what books they read, what cultural corners they inhabit. And you should talk directly to them, because they're going to have their own language and understanding. And that happens automatically if you read your own genre. I've met a lot of indie authors who don't read their own genre, and I find that very confusing. But it's definitely a thing you have to do.
Yeah, and I think one thing that helped me, reading 5 and 1-star reviews, seeing what people love and what they hate, and delivering to those readers, like avoiding, oh, they hated this, like this is something that, readers don't like.
At least that reader didn't like.
Or that,
yeah.
But finding trends.
Yeah, trends. One review, data point.
Yeah.
2 reviews, probably chance. 3 reviews, maybe a trend.
Right.
Okay, well, this has been a fantastic conversation, Job. Thank you so much for joining us. We're here with JA Merkel, Job Merkel, whose series is The Fall Gauntlet. Book 1 is Bear, and it is available at a link in the show notes, also on JA Merkel's website, and wherever you Is it available wherever you can get your ebooks?
Pretty much, yeah. I'm wide. Mm-hmm.
Love to hear it. Thanks so much for joining us, Job. Stuart, always a pleasure. And we'll be back with more hard-earned insights.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate
thanks,
it.
Job. Yeah, that was great. Enjoyed talking to you hugely. I think, a lot of people will get a lot of value from, your insights and what you've been saying and everything. And at some point, be nice to check in with you again and see how things are going and further the conversations and everything. Because as always, there's a lot more to talk about your series, about other things as well. But hugely enjoyable, and good luck with everything.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Had so much fun. You guys are so smart and insightful, and I'm going to keep listening to your episodes and supporting how I can in that way.
Love to hear it.
Good to hear.
Cheers.